And our story today is about a man called Abraham. And Abraham, through his life, really had to learn what it meant to trust God, because God kept asking him to do things that were very unusual for him and taking him to different places and different experiences. And it started off when he was younger. He was called by God to leave his home. Now that's quite a big thing to do, isn't it? And the reason that God wanted him to leave his home was because his family, or his father in particular, was an idol worshipper. And so in the house there were idols, and it wasn't good for Abraham to be in that kind of area. Now this was after the flood, after Noah's flood, and so God after that was trying to build a people for himself. And he was selecting people from here, there and everywhere because he was looking ahead, and eventually he wanted to make a great nation that belonged to him. And God made some big promises to him. He said, "You will be a blessing to others. You will be a great nation." When Abraham heard that God wanted to make him into a big, great nation, he thought to himself, there's a problem with that. What do you think the problem was?
He was too old to have a baby.
He was probably too old to have a baby. Not just him, but his wife was as well. Now he was 10 years older than his wife. And he thought to himself, well, I can't be the father of a big nation, so maybe God means to build this big nation through my servant. Now he had a servant called Eliezer. Eliezer was the person who was in charge of Abraham's whole household. But God said, no, it's going to be from your own body and your wife's own body that you're going to have children. And so what God says to him, he says, Abraham, I want you to go outside. Okay, so here's Abraham, and we're looking at him there. Now, I don't know what Abraham looked like, but what can we see about Abraham from that picture? Yes, Asiya.
He's old and has a beard.
He's old and has a beard. What time of day do you think it was? What do you think, Jonathan?
Nighttime.
Shall we have a look?
Yeah.
Jonathan, you're absolutely right. It was nighttime. So there it is. There's the dark night sky. Now, as he was looking up at the sky, what do you think God wanted him to notice? What do you think, Jonathan?
The stars.
The stars. Okay. Can you see any stars in our picture here?
No. In the corner.
Yeah. He took him outside to show him the stars. Now, why did God want to show him the stars? Jonathan?
Because he promised that he would have as many children as there were stars in the sky.
Exactly. Now, he said, great answer. He said, as many as there are stars in the sky, so it will be like your descendants. Now, someone's guessed that you could probably see 8,000 stars in the sky, but if it was really clear, there's no end to how many stars there are. The stars just keep on going. God said there'll be no end to how many of your descendants there'll be. In fact, God showed him another thing as well. Do you remember what else God showed him?
Well, how many specks of sand there were on the ground?
Yeah, he said, just as there are so many specks of sand on the ground, that's how many descendants you're going to have. Now, when God told Abraham this, he was actually 75 years old. So if he was 10 years older than his wife, how old was she at the time? See her?
65.
She was 65. Now, that's old to have a child, but that wasn't when it was going to happen. God made them wait 25 more years. Now, how do you keep going and believing? What's the word that we need to keep believing in God when it seems that it would be easier to not believe? What's the word? Yes?
Hope.
Hope is a good word. Do you know the other word, Asiya?
Trust.
Trust is a great word. There's one more begins with F. Yes?
Faith.
Faith. He had faith, and God loved Abraham's faith, because most people would think, well, hang on, I'm 75, I'm already too old, and the closer they got to 100, because that's how old he was, they'd be thinking, oh, I must have got that wrong, or God must have forgotten. But instead, God said, no, here's the time now. Because you've waited, because you've trusted, when he was 100 and his wife was 90 to have a child, she had a baby. And that's how we know it was God. And they had their son Isaac. Do you remember what happened to Isaac? What God asked Abraham to do later on? Do you remember what he asked him to do? Yes. To sacrifice him. Now, most people would think, well, hang on, God, I don't understand what you're doing. I've waited this long to have a child. Isn't this the child through whom you're going to make this great nation? And now you're asking me to sacrifice him? But Abraham had already learned what faith was. He'd waited, he knew that God could be trusted, and he went out to obey God, thinking that even if he was sacrificed, God had the power to raise him up to life again. But God never even made him do it. Because just as Abraham was going to obey, God said, stop. Now I know that you won't withhold anything from me. So all the way through Abraham's life, he had shown God that he would put God first. He left his home and he left his father because he said, no, God is more important to me. And even when he had a child in his old age, he said, I'm prepared to give that child up because of my faith and my love for God. God said to Abraham, I love your faith so much. Because of it, even though you're a sinner like we all are, I'm going to declare that you're righteous so that you can be with me forever in heaven. And that's really the same as us, that when we trust in God, even though we're sinners, God says when you have that faith in Jesus as the one who died in your place, if you have the same faith as Abraham, it will be given to you as righteousness. And because we believe, God says, you're now righteous enough to be with me forever in heaven. Faith is a wonderful thing. Faith is what God is looking for. He's not just looking for things we do. He's looking for that faith, that trust in God, that believes in him even when it's difficult.